Hear me out. Season 7 of Drag Race, but instead of lip syncing for their lives, the bottom queens have Pokemon battles. Will the original top 3 queens still make it to the end? Or will we see some surprises as we battle our way through the season? Welcome to Gotta Drag 'Em All. Hello friends, my name is Frankie and welcome to my channel. I think y'all are new here because this is my very first video. And I'm very excited because this really combines two of my most favorite things in the whole world, which is Pokemon and Drag Race, in the most ambitious crossover since Avengers or That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. In Gotta Drag 'Em All, instead of the bottom queens lip syncing for Rue, they're gonna duke it out for me in a 6v6 Pokemon battle for their mother tucking lives. And I chose to start with Season 7 because of how many iconic queens they have. It's kind of wild, right? How could I not start there? But before I get started with the rest of the video, I'm just gonna lay down some of the ground rules of how, everything is gonna work. Alright, so the first rule is I will only be using Pokemon up to and including the generation based on the season of RuPaul's Drag Race. So I don't know if that makes sense, but since this is the first series and it's about season 7 of RuPaul's Drag Race, I will be limiting the Pokemon I use to generations 1 through 7. Rule number 2, I will team build all 6 Pokemon for each queen based on their looks from the original season, so I'm not including any all-stars or any post-season gigs, okay? I'll also include, or take into consideration their memorable moments and quotes and or just their, general vibes from the season. Generally, I'm also going to try to avoid legendaries and try to build each team, somewhat thoughtfully with things like type coverage and item usage in mind. Number 3, I will simulate a battle between the two bottom queens using Pokemon Showdown, which is really just a fancy way of saying that I'll be playing versus myself, because I don't really have two friends who are of, similar skill when it comes to battling on Showdown, no tea, no shade, and this honestly really just felt like the fairest way for me to do things. And I really will be playing to win as both queens, but doing so as fairly and unbiased as I possibly can. So trust and believe me when I say that even though I'm playing both sides, I honestly had no idea who was going to win some of these battles until the very last move. Number 4, I will have some setup moves on some of the teams, but I'm going to cap the number of times that I can use each move to twice, so think 2 Calm Minds or 2 Sword Stances per Pokemon. I just want to keep the battles more interesting and avoid any situations where I have a full team sweep. Number 5. In future episodes, in the event that a queen was eliminated in the original season, but is still in my season, I'll do my best to really try to guesstimate, who the new bottom 2 queens of the episode would be. Now, with the ground rules done, let's really dive in to Season 7, Episode 1, Born Naked. Now, this episode was really all about setting up the main cliques for the rest of the season. In the case of Season 7, they really tried to amp up the whole old school versus new school drag thing, and that came to the forefront really quickly with our 2 bottom queens of the episode, Kandy and Tempest. Now, building Kandy Ho's team, I have to admit, her team is probably one of my favorites of the entire cast. So if we take a look at Kandy's runways from this season, from her entrance look all the way to her conjoined twins and finale look, I thought Gothitelle and Trevenant would fit well because of Kandy's Death Becomes Her and bearded runways. They're both giving a little bit of those spooky, vampy vibes. Next, we have Lee Vanny, because Kandy had a couple of yellowy, green, and floral-esque looks, like her entrance look and her spring runway, and also her green runway. Following that, I also chose Staraptor, because for me, her fall runway is giving Falconeer. I don't know if that's what she was going for, but that's what I get. Next, I chose Ampharos, which is yellow and black, just like Kandy's finale look. And lastly, I chose Jellicent, because Jellicent is, a similar shade of blue to Kandy's Despia Award dress, and also has some, iconic facial hair moments. Not to mention that cursed body. And that's that. That's Kandy's team. And honestly, again, it's probably one of my favorites. While Trevenant and Leavanny are weak to fire, Gothitelle and Jellicent can be tanky enough to take that hit. We have Ampharos for electric coverage that Jellicent and Staraptor are weak to, and we have Staraptor for ground immunities. So this team probably leans more physically offensive with Trevenant, Leavanny, and Staraptor, but specially offensive Ampharos, who has a life orb, is nothing to scoff at. Next, for Tempest du Jour, we didn't have as much material to work with, seeing as she was the original queen to sashay away first, but of the runways and looks that we did see of Tempest, none of them really stood out to me, very much, personally. But I loved her character on the season, and off the season, and one thing that came up a lot in the first episode was that thing I mentioned before, right? That whole old school versus new school of drag, where Tempest, being one of the older queens we had seen on the show, was of course looped in with the old school of drag gals. But with that comes wisdom, and that's really where I try to lean in on when choosing her team. First, Alakazam and Oranguru, both of whom I associate with, wisdom. And Alakazam has a similar color scheme to Tempest's spring runway. Next up, Gumshoes and Torkoal both just give off old man vibes, which I thought fit well with Tempest's story arc of the episode. Next up, we have Cofagrigus, because it's a coffin. Like, hello, need I say more? And lastly, I chose Druddigon, because the blue and red colors are similar to Tempest's finale look. Ultimately, this team should be pretty bulky, with both Torkoal and Cofagrigus as a defensive pairing. Alakazam and Oranguru are really big powerhouses on the special attack side. Meanwhile, Gumshoes and Druddigon are both physical attackers. So with that, let's get this show on the road. Mamoru, take us away.
Two queens stand before me. Ladies, this is your last chance to impress me and save yourself from elimination. The time has come for each
Pokemon battle.
for your life. Good luck, and don't get up.
Tempest starts off with Torkoal, and Kandy leads with Staraptor and gets off an Intimidate to drop Torkoal's attack stat. This is not a great matchup for Staraptor, so Kandy decides to switch out with a U-turn, but takes some Rocky Helmet damage. In comes Gothitelle, and Tempest sets up Stealth Rocks. Tempest goes for a Protect to see what Kandy wants to do, which is a Calm Mind. Because of Gothitelle's ability Shadow Tag, Tempest cannot switch out, which is really bad, as Kandy uses another Calm Mind. Kandy now goes on the offensive with a Psyshock, and Tempest uses Overheat, probably hoping for a crit to break through those special defense boosts on Gothitelle, but no luck. Kandy goes for another Psyshock while Tempest continues to use Overheat to hope for a crit. Once again, another Psyshock from Kandy, another Overheat from Tempest, and Torkoal survives on 1% health. Kandy finally takes care of Tempest's Torkoal with a final Psyshock, and that's the first Pokemon down. Now Tempest brings in Alakazam and goes for a super effective Shadow Ball, and Gothitelle retaliates with a Psyshock. Another Shadow Ball should do the trick. But it's not enough. Must have been a low roll as Gothitelle survives and takes out Alakazam with another Psyshock. Tempest is down to 4 Pokemon and brings in Cofagrigus, who can take that Psyshock from Gothitelle and use Knockoff to finally take her out. Kandy brings in Leavanny and takes some Stealth Rock damage while Tempest protects. Not wanting to take that hit on the next turn, Tempest switches Cofagrigus out and brings in Druddigon, who gets his Life Orb knocked off. Expecting a fire-type move, Kandy switches in Jellicent, but Tempest does a double switch and brings Cofagrigus back in against Jellicent. Kandy goes for a super effective Shadow Ball, who then goes for a knockoff. Expecting another Shadow Ball, Tempest switches out to Gumshoes in order to be immune to the Shadow Ball damage. Kandy switches Staraptor in after this, and gets a huge Intimidate off on Gumshoes, who goes for a Crunch and takes Staraptor down to a sliver of health. Tempest switches Cofagrigus back in, and both Pokemon will go down after recoil from that Brave Bird. Leavanny comes back out, and Tempest goes with Gumshoes. Kandy goes for a Leaf Blade, hoping for a critical hit, but it's not enough. Gumshoe survives and goes for a 4 times effective Fire Fang to tie up the game. In comes Jellicent, and Tempest swaps in Oranguru to soak the special attack. Kandy has to switch out at this point, and Ampharos comes in. Meanwhile, Tempest goes for Psychics. Ampharos gets a critical hit with Thunderbolt, but it's not enough. At this point, Ampharos goes down to another Psychic from Oranguru, and Kandy is down to her final 2 Pokemon. In comes Trevenant. After taking a Psychic, Kandy goes for a Horn Leech, and Oranguru survives with 2% health. Trevenant survives another Psychic thanks to that Horn Leech, and finally, Oranguru goes down. Down to her last 2 Pokemon now, Tempest sends out Druddigon. Kandy goes for a Horn Leech, but Druddigon makes quick work of Trevenant with Gunk Shot. Kandy's last Pokemon is Trevenant. Kandy's last Pokemon is Jellicent, going for a Recover and gets hit with an Outrage, but it's not enough. Curse Body activates, meaning Kandy can get off Recovers for free. Tempest goes for a Gunk Shot, gets the poison. Kandy goes for a Shadow Ball, and Tempest goes for another Gunk Shot. This is not looking good. Kandy eventually takes out the Druddigon after another Shadow Ball. Now Jellicent is faster than Tempest's last Pokemon Gumshoe, so Kandy just needs a critical hit, but Gumshoe survives and goes for the game-winning Crunch. And with that, Tempest du jour, Shantae, you stay, and Kandy Ho, sashay away. Oh my god, y'all. I really can't believe we had so many twists and turns on our very first battle, on our very first episode. Like, I don't think you'll want to miss any of the rest of the action of this season. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video so I know that you want me to keep making them. And honestly, comment down below if you have any thoughts or suggestions on what you'd want to see. Like, I'm all ears as I go through this YouTube journey. Videos will be posted every other week, so tune in 2 weeks where we'll find out which queen sashays away in Season 7, Episode 2, Glamazonian Airways. Bye-bye!